And it looks like the engine doesn't just come out like a regular car. It looks like we're going to have to separate the whole car in two. But that's another conversation for another day.
Here's a brutal truth nobody in the car world wants to say out loud. The most intimidating hypercar ever built can be defeated by a fuse from a shop where people buy wiper blades. That is not a metaphor. That is what actually happened. And the man who proved it did not come from a factory, a racing team, or a seven-figure budget. He came from a BMX ramp in Leicester, England, and he turned a repossessed Bugatti Veyron into the most embarrassing case study Bugatti's pricing department has ever been forced to witness. But here is what makes this story different from every other garage rebuild you have ever watched. This car did not surrender easily. Every single time Matt Armstrong solved one of its problems, the Veyron came up with a brand new one. And the final breakdown happened on a runway, in perfect weather, with a clear dashboard and a crowd watching right at the exact moment it should have been over. We need to go back to the beginning, because how Armstrong got here matters more than you might think. He was born on the 11th of June, 1993. His first classroom was his father Tony's garage, standing beside a working mechanic who showed him how engines came apart and went back together before he was old enough to understand what he was absorbing. That foundation stayed with him, but for a long time it ran in the background. Because for his teenage years, Matt Armstrong was not a car guy. He was a BMX rider, sponsored, competitive, traveling to France, Germany, and Dubai for events, filming his own riding for sponsors, accidentally building the storytelling instincts that would later make him famous. Then a shoulder dislocation at the BMX World Championships in Germany ended all of it. What followed was the part of the story people skip over. He worked at his father's garage, delivered food, bartended, took whatever shifts were available. He launched a YouTube channel on April 7, 2013, originally built around BMX content, and it went nowhere meaningful until his girlfriend's Audi TT got wrecked in a crash. Instead of writing it off, he bought the damaged car and filmed the rebuild. That series changed everything. The format locked in. Buy something wrecked. Fix it on camera. Do not look away from the ugly parts. The real breakthrough came during COVID. A rebuilt Bentley Continental GT found a massive audience stuck at home, looking for something real to watch. From there, the projects grew. A Porsche 911 GT3 once owned by Adam LZ. A Lamborghini Murcielago that had not run in years. A Ferrari 430 he restored as a personal gift to his father, which said more about who he is than any subscriber count ever could. By March 2026, his main channel had crossed 6.3 million subscribers. Combined across all his channels, $9.86 million, total views approaching 1.5 billion. None of that prepared him for what came next. Before the Veyron entered his life, Armstrong was already deep inside the most complicated project he had ever taken on. A Bugatti Veyron Pure Sport, one of roughly 60 ever produced, belonging to American influencer Alex Gonzalez. The car had been heavily damaged, and the official Bugatti repair quote had come back at approximately $1.7 million. Later reduced to $600,000. Still rejected. When Armstrong and Gonzalez pushed forward with an independent rebuild, Bugatti responded by blacklisting the car's VIN, refusing to sell genuine parts to support any work conducted outside their authorized network. The CEO of Bugatti Rimac, Mate Rimac, entered the conversation publicly, citing real safety concerns about independent repairs on machinery that complex. Armstrong acknowledged the concern and kept building anyway. It was while he was still inside the Veyron saga that the Veyron appeared. He bought it through a repossession company, Dubai market history, limited ownership records, no master plan behind the purchase. He has said plainly that a Bugatti was never on his dream car list. But once he understood what the Veyron actually was, a machine only 450 of which were ever built, and which now sells in healthy condition for upward of £1.5 million, something shifted. He started calling it possibly the greatest car the world would see in his lifetime. Whether he paid 6 figures or crept toward 7, he has never confirmed. He has only ever described the price as significantly lower than the car deserved. The car he received was not running. The gearbox was dead. Through any official Bugatti channel, that repair carried an estimate of $350,000 to $400,000. For a car bought at a steep discount, a bill that size could have instantly erased the logic of the entire purchase. Instead, Armstrong ran a full diagnostic and found the source of the failure: a blown fuse. He replaced it with a component from Halfords, the same shop most British drivers visit when they need windshield wipers or an air freshener. A fault the industry would have charged $350,000 to fix, solved with a part that cost a few pounds. That fuse fix was the first crack in a myth. Armstrong took the lesson further during a full service. Official Bugatti Veyron servicing carries estimates as high as $25,000. Routed through an authorized network built around white glove experiences rather than actual mechanical cost. Armstrong bypassed it entirely and discovered something Bugatti would rather not advertise. Many of the Veyron's components are standard Volkswagen Group parts wearing Bugatti part numbers. Spark plugs that cross-reference directly to standard NGK units. Accumulator tanks shared with the Volkswagen Lupo. A city car that retails for a fraction of what one of the Veyron's tires costs. His complete service bill came to £1,193, roughly $2,600. The badge on the bonnet had been carrying more of the price tag than the parts bin ever deserved. But the myth turned out to be the easiest thing to dismantle. The actual mechanical problems were considerably harder. With the gearbox fuse resolved, a new wave of faults surfaced. An engine misfire, a leaking radiator, a separate fuse box problem compounding the original issue. Solving each one meant sourcing genuine replacement components, and that was where the Chiron situation repeated itself almost exactly. Bugatti's legal framework effectively prevented certain parts from being sold for vehicles being repaired outside the authorized network. Mark McCann, another YouTuber attempting his own Veyron rebuild, had run into the same wall. This was not an oversight. This was policy. Armstrong pressed forward regardless. He repaired bodywork by hand. He refreshed damaged components. He made one significant cosmetic decision along the way, replacing the car's original light blue accents with a satin metallic silver finish that gave the rebuilt Veyron a completely different presence than it had carried during its Dubai ownership. Every diagnostic session was documented for an audience that had already watched him fight Bugatti's parts department once before and understood by now that nothing about this project would ever be straightforward. What remained after all of that was the hardest technical challenge the Veyron had saved for last, a feature almost no independent mechanic had ever attempted to recreate from scratch. The Veyron does not simply allow its driver to access 253 miles per hour by pressing harder on the throttle. Unlocking top speed mode requires a second physical key, separate from the standard driving key, that reconfigures the car's active aerodynamics and drops it into its high-speed suspension geometry. This is not theater. The quad-turbocharged 8.0-liter W16 engine produces 987 horsepower and 922 pound-feet of torque. At full speed, the Veyron covers more than 370 feet every single second. The aerodynamic adjustments the speed key authorizes are not optional at those velocities. They are the difference between a record and a catastrophe. Official replacement cost for that key through Bugatti channels would have meant going back to the exact system that had already tried to stop the project twice. Instead, Armstrong worked with an auto locksmith and built one himself after establishing that the underlying mechanism relied on a relatively straightforward physical key system. It was the same philosophy that had run through the entire build. Understand the machine, remove the mystique, find the actual solution under the brand. It almost felt like the hard part was done. The team cleared every remaining fault individually, a fuse that had knocked out the indicators, the persistent engine misfire, a TPMS warning that threatened to prevent top speed mode from engaging at all, since the system refuses activation if it cannot confirm correct tire condition. Armstrong and his team worked through each one until, for the first time across the entire project,